Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Babygirl Book Club.
Woo!
Yes, it's the inaugural episode, and we're so excited to be talking today about Manacled by Senlinyu. It's a Harry Potter fan fiction about Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger in an alternate universe where Voldemort won the war, Harry Potter and pretty much everyone from the Order of the Phoenix is dead. Hermione is forced into the horrifying role of a surrogate under Voldemort's new dark regime. So, Jess.
Yeah.
You're a Harry Potter fan, right?
I sure am.
Yeah. It's interesting because I have not really read, I think, like any fan fiction about Harry Potter.
No, this was the first for me too.
Yeah, which was, I think, an interesting choice to start with. We had wanted to do a different book for our first episode, and one of us wasn't really feeling that particular book, so I had kind of bookmarked a few other options, and I think... Did you started reading it first?
I did. I was looking for something to read and I couldn't find anything, and I felt bad about not liking any of the other books you recommended. And I was like, well, I'll give this one a go. And I honestly was nervous I wasn't going to like that one either, but I was immediately sucked in.
Right, yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, I think you texted me like the day after you started it, and you're like, I haven't put it down.
No. I think I stayed up till like 1 a.m. that night reading it, and that whole week until I was done reading it. Every single minute, if I was on the toilet, I was reading it. My family came up to visit, and I found reasons to go to the bathroom to keep reading it. I mean, it just sucks you right in, you know?
I had a couple nights of doing the same thing because I started reading it after you gave it such a good review. I was like, okay, well, maybe this will be the one that we'll get started with. And I got sucked into it so fast that I didn't even have time to put it on my Kindle. I didn't tell you this.
No.
Yeah, I just had it on my phone, like open on Archive of Our Own, and was just kind of reading it here and there. Like if I had a few minutes waiting around, if I was in the bathroom, if I was at work, waiting for something to load at work, I'm like, well, I'll read a couple lines here and there. I definitely stayed up late a few nights. There was one night in particular, I made a deal with my fiance. I was like, well, we'll hang out, but why don't you play a video game and I'll just like sit here and read next to you. So romantic. And I stayed up really late reading that night, and it was a work night. And then I went to bed, waited a minute or two, and I was like, you know what? I could stay up a little bit later. Like I could read another chapter. So there were a few nights where I like told myself, all right, I'm done. I'm going to bed. And then I was laying in bed, like on my phone, scrolling, like reading more and more. So we decided to do this book because it's free to download on Archive of Our Own. You can download it in a few different formats and put it on your phone, on your Kindle, a tablet, laptop. I don't know what else.
You might even be able to print it out if you really wanted to.
Yeah, maybe you could. It would be,
a lot.
Have it open.
Because it's like a 30-hour book.
Yeah, I think it's over 1,000 pages. So make sure, get your printer ink ready. I guess if you're going to print it out.
You're going to do that.
Yeah, make sure you've got enough. Maybe print it at work so that way you're not paying for it.
But she's taking it down soon, isn't she?
Yeah, so you have till the end of the year to download it for free on Archive of Our Own because the author Senlinyu is redoing it to make a real book.
Right.
A real published book, which you looked it up, right? It's
called The Alchemist.
The Alchemist?
Or it will be. I think it'll be good.
Alchemized or something like that.
Or maybe Alchemized, yeah. The only thing, I don't know. See, what I struggle with is, am I going to like it as much because it won't be about Draco and Hermione anymore?
Right.
Or will it stand that test? We'll find out. I hope so. I'd love to read it again.
I was honestly a little shocked by your reaction. I figured that you would like it just knowing about the books you've recommended to me, kind of more of the like dark romance, enemies to lovers, that kind of thing is something you really vibe with. So I thought you would enjoy it, but what I wasn't prepared for was you becoming the biggest Hermione shipper that has ever sailed.
Oh, me either. I think I've recommended it to at least 5 of our mutual friends coworkers. Alyssa's already finished reading it. She read it quicker than you or I did.
Really? What?
She read it in like 3 days.
Wow.
Dude. Yeah, ridiculous.
That's crazy. I didn't know that she had started reading it. I guess I was on vacation for a little bit, so I missed.
I think I finished reading it right before Halloween. So at the Halloween festivities, I was like, "Have you read this? Have you read this?" to every person I talked to.
It was definitely a good time of the year to read it.
Yes.
You know, something about the Hogwarts atmosphere really speaks to the spooky vibes. And then I do know people have said like the Manacled slump is real.
Yes.
Afterward. So if you join us in enjoying this text, just be prepared.
Yeah, emotionally.
For the roller coaster ride. That's something I've seen people discuss a lot as well, is that this is a really highly recommended book, but it is dark.
Yes.
And it is deep and emotional, kind of like, you know, dark Harry Potter universe meets Handmaid's Tale. So if you're familiar with how Handmaid's Tale is set up at all, it's a little sketchy. Definitely check out the like content warnings, trigger warnings.
You know what you're getting into.
I will say, at least for me, who's not like the biggest fan of dark romance, I didn't think it was overly dark. Maybe,
really?
Maybe I'm maybe I do.
Do you mean like the romance sexual part of it?
Yeah, I mean like the, how do I put this? The the surrogacy and, you know, what two people who have to perform those acts
the
of
rape you're talking about,
sexual assault.
Okay.
You know, it's definitely, you feel the emotions Hermione goes through deeply. They do a great job of getting you into her head. But as far as the physical descriptions, I think the author tried their best to explain what happened, but not make it, I guess, like gratuitous.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's what I told everyone who read it. I said, you know, or who I recommended read it. I think she did those scenes very well, so they weren't problematic. And I think when we talk about like dark romance, you know, the romance itself isn't really dark in this book. The book is dark.
Yes.
And what the characters go through is dark, but it's not your classic dark romance where like non-con is the kink that readers are looking for, because it's not the kink in this, right?
I think that was mostly spoiler free, right? Just kind of going through the setup of the universe. And I think it's kind of implied that in some way the two of them are kind of like forced to participate in this
Handmaid's Tale.
Yes. Okay. So from here, we're going to get into some spoiler territory, I believe. So if you haven't read it and you don't think you're going to read it, feel free to listen along. Or if you have gone through the Manacled saga, keep listening, because we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So the book is kind of set up in like 3 to 4 parts, right?
Yeah.
The first part is getting into the surrogate program and like life at Malfoy Manor. And then from there, we go into these like this long section of flashbacks, essentially.
Yeah. I almost wondered if she wrote the flashback section first and then built the rest of the book around that after.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, it would make sense as far as like continuity, right? Because it would be hard to set up some of the things that happen in the first part without knowing what happened. Exactly. So after that, then there's the part at Malfoy Manor, and then there's the safe house. and the
Yes,
epilogue.
and the
Okay, so
epilogue.
those are kind of the parts. When we first get to the story, Hermione is in solitary confinement.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's what sucked me right in.
It was weird.
It was so crazy. I mean, she can't see, she can't speak. She's just in the dark by herself for 2 fucking years.
Doing push-ups.
Doing push-ups. Of all things. I mean, what else would you do, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I would do push-ups, if I'm honest.
I don't know, dude. After a couple weeks.
Maybe.
I don't know. I feel like I'd do something.
She's in the cell. She's getting buff. She's in the dark. She can't speak. Food comes sometimes, but she doesn't have a good sense of time.
No.
You know? She gets taken out of the cell, and we meet, like, Dolores Umbridge is the warden of Hogwarts prison unit.
Right, because Hogwarts is no longer a school. It is Voldemort's prison.
Yes. As Hermione comes out of solitary confinement, they examine Hermione and they find that there are parts of Hermione's memory that are walled off from the attempts at reading her mind. Legilimency.
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
In my head, I say it leglimency.
Leglimency.
But I don't think that's
Who
how they
knows?
say it.
I don't
No
know.
one
Is it
knows.
Latin? I'm not sure. Anyway, the mind reading, and these are parts of her memory that are largely during and after, like, the war.
It's already ended.
Right.
Everybody's already dead.
Yes.
Well, no, even before
Right.
the war is blocked off. But it's the part after the war that is so concerning to
Right.
Voldemort and his
Yes.
people. Because if everybody's dead, why does she need to protect it?
Yes. Which
And Hermione herself doesn't remember either.
so nobody can access these memories. So Voldemort and Snape are, like, checking everything out, trying to see what Hermione has to offer as somebody who was so close to Harry and, like, such an active member of the Order of the Phoenix. And then Healer Stroud waltzes in and suggests that magical pregnancies can sometimes help heal these fugue state kind of memories, right? Which was an interesting way to explain what's going on in her head, these, like, fugue states. I think it goes to show how dark it's gonna get. Because as I understand it, it wasn't really intentional, the walling off of the memories. It was more like, oh, actually, I have a quote. Your magic has walled off parts of your mind. As a result, it fragmented you somewhat. Normally, a fugue is general, but these appear almost surgically precise, is how these inaccessible memories are explained. So Healer Stroud is like, hey, I have a great idea. We're doing this breeding program, and having a magical child can help heal issues with memory, especially if the father of the child is a skilled Legilimens mind reader. Again, so sorry if we are totally butchering how to say that.
Yeah.
But I think it's close. I don't really know. Well, Voldemort decides that the High Reeve is the man for the job.
He decides Snape is at
Well,
first.
right. And then Snape is like, I have to go to Romania.
Right.
I have to do
You want me to do this
whatever.
other thing? And-
Right. So then they're like, with the High Reeve, he's great at reading minds. Let's get him to do it. And at first, the High Reeve is kind of a mysterious character, right? He's the Dark Lord's
Right hand.
yes, and he is the executioner, which they explain is a very skilled position because to fire off a bunch of, like, killing curses takes a toll on the mind and the soul. So he's, like, just a cold-blooded killer, and there's some sort of motivation behind what he's doing that allows him to access that really cruel and evil part of, there's, like, a secret motive, I guess, behind why he's able to do all of these murders.
Right. Well, and without fainting, or,
Right.
nothing happens. He's just bam, bam, bam. Whereas everyone else throughout the book, when they talk about that, it's, 1 or 2 and done.
Right.
Your
Right.
magic's used up.
Hermione she gets a new pair of manacles that say property of the High Reeve.
Oh, yeah, because that's the other thing. Even in the prison, she was wearing these manacles, which suppressed her magic.
Yes. I think that was cool. That was a cool aspect of the story. This, like, character who was like so dark and mysterious, because the general public doesn't know who the High Reeve is.
Right.
Yeah. He's just a mysterious
Voldemort's right hand.
Yes.
Don't want to cross him.
Hermione is given the new manacles. She's indoctrinated into the breeding program. And while they're kind of like training, we meet these other characters from Hermione's past. These different women who were in the Order of the Phoenix, who largely have been tortured. One of them is missing an eye. I think it might have been Hannah Abbott, who's I believe she's a Hufflepuff.
Parvati Patel is one of them.
Yes.
Lavender Brown.
Angelina. Is that one of them?
Yeah.
I don't remember her last name.
I don't either.
We're so good at this.
We are so good at this. Cho
Chang.
Cho Chang.
Harry's first girlfriend. Yep. This is a way for Voldemort to introduce more magical people into the society, because we learned that these like pure-blooded families have fertility issues, a lot of them. So these half-blood or mudblood women are given out as brood mares to make more magical children, even though they are like of lesser stature as far as blood status is concerned, right? Okay, so she's all trained up. She learns that the manacles suppress the magic, and to some point they offer some sort of compulsion to like do what the master is like telling them. They can't they can't use weapons. They can't speak unless spoken to, I believe.
I think, we learn later is that it's really how the witch wearing the manacles took it, because Hermione at times thinks she's not allowed to speak to Draco unless he says anything, but she realizes she can. That's just how she understood it, right? And so the second she changes her understanding of what it means to be quiet, she is able to.
Once the Hogwarts like little in-service training is completed, she's taken to Malfoy Manor, where she's given a very lovely welcome from Draco and his wife Astoria. I don't remember her from the Harry Potter series.
I don't either.
Okay. I don't know if she existed. She could have been like mentioned in the background. Right. I won't say at one point I definitely was the only Harry Potter scholar in the universe. I was fully obsessed with the series like as a kid. I mean, we are at that age where like the books were coming out when we were like the perfect age to be reading them. I remember like going to parties at the bookstore late at night, like until midnight, and they had like big stacks of the new book when it came out, like before the movies even started. And yeah, just like staying up till midnight and then like picking up our copy at the bookstore. And so this was really overall like a treat, despite the darkness, because it was a reminder of how much I love these characters and how much I love this universe, despite some of the things that have happened in the real world after publishing, which we won't get into about the author of the Harry Potter series. But so this was a new way to enjoy that world. Enjoy may be the wrong word, because it again is a very dark series. But anyway, we're at Malfoy Manor. Astoria is not really on board, and Draco himself seems very cold.
Yes, very detached, very forced.
Yes.
To deal with this.
Yeah, he's really only doing all of this because Voldemort, the Dark Lord, has requested or ordered that he participate in this, and he is nothing but the Dark Lord's most faithful servant. Or so he would like us to believe. So that's why he is participating in all of this. And they don't waste much time getting to the participation part of everything. It seems like neither of them really enjoy the process of, basically sexual assault that happens a few times. And again, it's somewhat detached, and you get a glimpse into Hermione's mind as she's trying to like take herself away from it. She's thinking about like brewing potions, stuff like that.
Like forcing herself to disassociate.
Yeah, get through it. We also learn at the manor that due to her solitary confinement, she's developed like severe agoraphobia. Like even walking in the hallways in the manor kind of like gives her this like panic. Hermione was like a special case at the prison. You know, none of these other women were given this harsh sentence of like 16 months or whatever of solitary confinement. It seems like Hermione was imprisoned in that way because Dolores Umbridge had it out for her.
She had a serious grudge against her.
At some point through all this, we do see like Dolores getting punished for treating her that way, because they wanted to keep these women at least somewhat sane and somewhat healthy physically so that they could become surrogates. You know, Hermione is such a bright witch, such a smart woman, and you really see her just degraded into this like terrified person. And I think they did a really good job with making you see that and making you feel that.
Making you feel exactly how she feels. And I think that's part of why, even in the first part, this book is just so heavy. Like, she just wants to die.
Yeah.
And you're just in her thoughts about how she can't even die. Like, there's not even a way to do that. And there is nothing left for her other than death. And it's just terrible suffering. And it's, oh man.
We do see, and I will say, like, that was kind of something I didn't like about this first part, because the Hermione that I know is this like strong, resilient woman, and we see her as this like just defeated person. And I was like, annoying's not the right word. I didn't find it annoying, but I was like, I'm really rooting for her. I'm like, you know what, Hermione? Like, if there's anyone in this universe who can figure out how to get out of this situation, girl, it's you. So, like,
but that's why it's so heavy, is because she can't figure it out.
Right.
There is no way, you know, and all the plans she comes up with are really just to find a way to get herself killed or to kill Malfoy. But even then, I don't think she believes that if she kills him, she'll get away. I think killing him is just the way to get to killing herself.
That's interesting.
And yeah,
That's very interesting. She does start getting through it, like, despite this, like, multiple sexual assaults, and also Draco is still doing the mind reading, because again, the point of getting her pregnant in the first place is to break down these barriers in her mind. So not only is she being like physically assaulted, but also mentally, like he's going through all of her memories and looking through anything he can find that could be a key into unlocking those fugues. And he's not very nice. I mean, he's not nice about it. Right. He could be worse, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think at some points before she gets pregnant, he takes her to Voldemort so Voldemort can do it. And that's when you see maybe like, yeah, he's not nice about it, but he's nicer.
Yeah, because Voldemort fucks her up, dude. Like at one point, as Hermione is trying to like figure out how to fight, she starts reading the Daily Prophet, and she starts folding paper cranes. Do you remember that? And then shortly after that, she has to go to Voldemort for more mind reading sessions. And he is looking through memories of her parents, like talking, and then like the memory of her mother, I think it was, teaching her how to fold these paper cranes. And Voldemort takes that memory and rips it apart. Right. And totally makes it so she can't remember it.
Or how to make the paper cranes, which is her one
her one escape. Right. And that doesn't go away. She doesn't heal from that, which that was really difficult because, like, spoiler, for the whole book, she's trying to like think about how to do it and remember why she was ever compulsed to do that in the first place, right? And it's gone.
It's gone. She has totally no idea.
But we do see outside of the bad stuff, we see a few moments where Draco shows some sort of caring for Hermione. And it's
subtle.
Yes.
It's extremely subtle, and that is the piece too. So this whole first part of the book, I'm like, how in ever loving hell are they going to transform this into a romance? Like, how are they going to do it? There's got to be some magic behind this, because how do you come back from this? How do you come back from this? And that was where I guessed how they were going to spin it into a romance, which I was very proud of myself for doing.
I'm not surprised that you figured that out. And like, I knew it had to be something.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured that these fugues were these inaccessible memories were some sort of key into that relationship. Maybe it's just Draco, because anytime he is nice to her, not even nice, just not downright horrible to her, he spins it into, well, it's a matter of convenience for me to buy you a nice pair of shoes because I have to replace your shoes all the time.
Right.
Or I'm going to go on walks with you because you have to spend time outside. And yeah, oh my God, you're worse than a dog. Like you're more of a pain in my neck than some dumb dog. So Draco is like a mastermind in these moments. And he, at least to me, he really didn't give it away.
No.
Which is very compelling. And as we learn about, when we go back into those flashbacks and we learn about their actual relationship, and I made some notes for the podcast and I read through the beginning of the book when they're at the manor and doing all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like I was heartbroken about it. Like the fact that he actually does care about this woman and he has to treat her like she is the lowest scum and physically assault this woman that he loved. Oh, it was really heartbreaking. If you want to be really bummed out, I guess you could try doing that. Go back through and check that stuff out. So while they're at the manor, Hermione does start to kind of get back into some of those memories that she can't access. Like she starts having dreams about Harry, who is a chain smoker, or like Alistair Moody, who was a big part of the order. She's starting to like slowly get back into who she was, and she's reading more, she's just trying to like find something to motivate her and get her through what she's currently going through. So as far as the manor is concerned, the other thing I wanted to bring up was Draco's wife, Astoria, and also like the Graham Montague storyline, which was interesting. So Astoria is this like socialite, right? Because I guess Draco Malfoy is like everyone's like little dark prince of he's like a celebrity.
Right.
So his wife is like going to these events and like
hosting these events.
Hosting these parties. And at one of the parties, Hermione sees Astoria having sex with Graham Montague, like in a hallway somewhere. She's like concerned because she's like, oh, if I keep watching this, like Draco is going to see this in my head. Yeah. Like he's going to see my memories.
And she feels bad for him.
Right. Yeah. Because
which is interesting.
Right.
At this point in the story.
Right. Because he's her captor. He's her like, rapist. Right. She also is like, it sucks, I guess, that your wife is cheating on you. Like, I don't know. And then at some point, there's like two parties at the manor, I think. There's like a New Year's party and like a Ostara party that they have or something. The first run-in with Graham Montague, he's like, oh, you don't remember me?
Yeah, he breaks into her room. He finds her, breaks into her room, and is like, why does Malfoy have all these wards on this room? You were hard to find.
What did you think about that, like that first interaction? What did you think was his motivation for trying to find her? Did you get any inclination?
That I wasn't sure on. I think I thought the same things Hermione did, that maybe he was the spy for the Order of the Phoenix, and like, I think she says like there's something about him that's familiar, but she can't place it. But she does also feel hesitant to trust that because there is something about him that's a little scary. So I think I believed everything Hermione believed, but it was at this point too, like, oh, why does he have all these wards protecting her? And there have been those subtle, nice things Draco did for her that is this someone she needs protecting from?
I had kind of the same feeling. And during the first interaction, I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. Like if he was the good guy,
Right.
you know, if this was the guy that was going to like bust her out or whatever. And turns out that could not be farther from the truth. That was a good little twist there. Senlinyu got me for sure, got me, because at this like the second interaction, and this is kind of an off-page moment, at least the worst part of it is like he corners her like outside and assaults her, and it's really bad. And then he puts a confundus charm on her, so she is out of it, and then comes back to it, and Draco has kind of saved the day
by ripping his intestines out. I feel like it's important.
Yeah, it is important. Draco goes absolutely nuts on this guy, and which, like, why would you fuck with the High Reeve? I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's just because Graham Montague is a moron, and
we find out during the flashback.
Right. Yes. He did have some motivation to try to get his, I suppose. I certainly wouldn't fuck with Draco Malfoy. No. So, and then we do also find out that once he's like disemboweled, he goes to St. Mungo's, the hospital, and Draco is so enraged that he apparates to St. Mungo's and murders Graham Montague in their waiting room.
He rips his intestines out again, but this time make sure he can't put them back in.
At that point, that's how he outs himself as
the High Reeve.
Yes.
And to me, as I knew where the story was going at that point, especially because Hermione, the whole time Graham is attacking her, is like, there's something important I need to tell him, but I can't remember what it is. And then right as Malfoy gets to her, she says, Malfoy always comes for me. And that is the point at which I was like...
Ooh, that just gave me chills.
Well, and that's the point at which it's like, okay, there's only one way this can go, right?
Right. So after that whole thing, Malfoy comes back and he finds his wife is pissed. Astoria is now out for blood, and fucking Hermione could not catch a break in these moments. Yes, because first she's all messed up by Graham, and then Astoria gets her hands on Hermione, and she's like, well, you know, we need you to be able to breed, but we don't need you to be able to see. So I'm going to like mess with your eyes. And she ends up like puncturing the sclera and like pulling it like out of her
she pulls her
eye
like
socket.
Halfway out of her head.
Draco comes back to catch her doing this, and he's again furious. Which of course, because his wife is like trying to blind the woman that he secretly loves. So Hermione then has to guide Malfoy into diagnosing like her injury and helping her heal it, which is our first like I believe our first like real insight into just how talented Hermione was as a healer and how skilled. And also that Draco has some sort of skill with the healing arts himself, which is really interesting. And shortly after that, Draco, of course, has like the best eye healer in the world come to the manor to look after his
surrogate.
Yes. His property, but who he secretly loves and adores. And the healer is like, oh wow, you did like a really good job like taking care of this. Like you shouldn't be a killer, you should be a healer. So that was interesting little look into a different side of their life and their relationship. So I think shortly after this point, it's been like several months at some point, and she's not getting pregnant.
I think it's been like 5. Is it
Something
5
like
months?
that.
It's something 5 or 6, something like that.
Long enough to be miserable, that's for sure. Healer Stroud is like not super happy.
No, because all the other surrogates are pregnant at this point.
Right. So she brings it upon herself to like give Hermione like she gives her I think it was a fertility potion or something, and it makes her boobies grow.
Right, right.
And I think that was actually before Montague, because Montague was like, you didn't have these last time I saw you.
Yes. Oh my God.
Her big magical tits.
Terrible.
They are like ordered to do things differently and more intimately.
Right. Because at this point, you know, as far as the sexual assault stuff goes, you know, Draco really keeps it quite surgical.
Yeah.
It is the 5 days she's ovulating that they are required to do that. It is very disconnected, quick.
But apparently,
that's the problem.
Yes. With a magical pregnancy, there needs to be more of an emotional connection, which this is kind of where it started feeling to me like a classic romance trope kind of thing. Like, ooh, they're forced to be together and they are forced to love each other, and even through this horrible experience, they're like, well, you guys have to look into each other's eyes and whatever. So they do that stuff, and then we do get a glimpse in those scenes as like how this really affects Draco. You know, because we're seeing into Hermione's mind and how she's reacting to the like sexual assaults in the moment. But Draco gets out of there like the second it's over with. Right. So we don't ever see his reaction until these moments where after they are done, Draco immediately goes and throws up. Yeah. And Hermione's like, does he do that every time? Like,
right.
You know,
and she's like, oh my God, he doesn't want to rape me.
Right.
And this is also too after I think she like sneaks out while Astoria is having a party and hears these other pureblood men boasting about their surrogates and how bad. They're all essentially sex slaves, right? And she realizes too, like maybe she's like, well, I guess Draco's not as bad, you know, at least it's just these 5 days that he's required, and he's not making me do all these terrible things all these other men are talking about.
Again, we're learning more about how the other pure-blooded men treat their surrogates, and in kind of a messed up way, I guess. It could be worse for Hermione considering these other characters.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the conclusion she comes to.
Right.
Is, you know, almost feeling grateful that she's with Draco because he's not doing all these extra terrible things.
Right, yeah, like fully Stockholm syndromed.
Like, yeah. well, yeah. And some of the stuff she overhears is, you know, disgustingly terrible. Yeah. And, you know, yes, it's still not good what Draco's doing, but it's much better, you know, from her perspective.
All of these potions, there's several different potions during this time that we see the effects of and hear about, which I thought that was interesting as like, again, a fan of the Harry Potter universe. Like, it was cool to see the diagnostic charms and different healing stuff. I think all of that extra lore was super cool to be incorporated into the universe. So all of these extra potions that Hermione is on to try to become pregnant, and the, you know, fake love that they have to be in to conceive, I guess, it works and she's pregnant. She kind of freaks out because, you know, once she has completed this part of the surrogacy and given Malfoy an heir, that puts her future at risk, because once she's given up the goods, what are they going to do to her?
Well, and I think too, for me, I see it more too as she's terrified for her baby. Like, she can't leave her baby with these people, and what's Astoria going to do to it? And I think she's more concerned about that, because up till this point, she's just wanted to die, you know, but her baby becomes the biggest thing. And then she does try to hurt herself at one point, and Draco stops her, and she makes him promise that he'll keep the baby safe.
Yes.
And he does.
Right.
Or he promises that, I mean.
Yeah. So it does seem like the magical pregnancy is kind of doing what it's supposed to do and breaking down these barriers. She's having more dreams about people she used to interact with and stuff. And I think she does end up, she has like morning sickness and stuff like that, right?
She does, but I think it's so bad, like she can't even eat. So she pretty
Right.
much stops eating and is just sleeping all the time.
Yeah.
Because she's so weak, she can't even move.
Right. And Draco is kind of like doing his due diligence under the guise of like, well, you're my surrogate and I need to make sure you survive this pregnancy again. He's kind of using that to mask the fact that, okay, now this woman that he secretly loves is pregnant with his child. So now we get into these memories. Hermione ends up, do you remember, does she like fully like go into like just flashback mode?
No, I think so. I think the whole time, even before she's pregnant, she starts having dreams and kind of glimmers of memories. You know, there's something Ginny tells her, but she can't remember what Ginny said, but she knows it's really important to why the memories are locked, you know, and there's a couple different things we see throughout the whole first part of the book. But then once she's pregnant and kind of like on death's door, you know, and Draco doesn't leave her side, they become more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, the big pain in her brain becomes like blinding and it's like a bomb that goes off. And that's when we flip into part 2, which is the flashbacks.
Which is my favorite part.
Yes.
Was it your favorite part?
It was my absolute favorite.
It was so
It's
good.
the true romance
Right.
piece, which, you know, I don't know about you, but the whole first part, you don't really know how to feel about Draco. You know, at first you hate him and you're like, how on earth is this going to turn into a love story? Like, there's no possible way, you know? And then as it goes on, I started questioning like, oh, they knew each other before. Like, that's how they're going to spin this. And then once you get to the flashbacks and you really get into them, I kind of felt terrible for Draco.
Yes.
Because it's like, Hermione, were you really any better?
No.
You know, like the manipulation and oh God.
They both definitely, which that was interesting to see that side of Hermione.
Yes.
Right. Because as we know her classically, she's true Gryffindor.
Right.
She's, you know, on the side of good and she's on the side of doing what's right and like not falling into these like darker temptations of like dark magic and like evil things, even though she knows quite a bit about them just because she has like a curious mind and is she's a smart lady. But yeah, she torments this guy. And I mean, she's dealing with a lot.
She is.
You know?
She's put into this position.
So when we get to these flashbacks, and again, this part was like the part I could not put down. Like I loved like every second of this because there was so much going on, and it was that look into like the world building and the character building that I wanted so badly when I was reading the first part. So then it is fucking dumped on you in bucketfuls. So Hermione, it turns out after Hogwarts became, the school is done, right? And everyone in the order is like on the run.
Right.
War
is happening.
Yes, like full on war of good versus evil. She ends up training as like a healer in, I think, several different countries to learn different techniques and stuff. And she also becomes a potion master through the training of Severus Snape, who is a double agent, of course. You know, she's great at charms work and defense and stuff like that as well. But because she is so good at potions and healing, when we catch up with her story, she's not on the front lines anymore. She is working constantly.
She's pretty much their only healer.
Yes.
Like they have a few others, but she is the one in charge, the one they depend on.
Because they also have, I think it was Madame Pomfrey and Padma Patil, one of the Patils.
So. I think
so she is like working herself to the bone every single day.
And they're losing. The
Yes.
order is losing. Voldemort's already has a shadow government in power. They've already kind of taken over the, political sphere, but in the order's in hiding, still fighting.
Yes.
And they're losing terribly. And she's seeing all these casualties. And she starts advocating that they also start using the dark arts.
Right, because they are fighting against like this army from hell, essentially, because there is Dolohov, is that his name?
Yep.
He has this like cursed division where they're coming up with like new evil curses.
Chemical warfare.
Yes, they're doing like human experiments. It's pretty fucked up. And Hermione is seeing the effects of this every day. And she is telling Harry and Ron, you guys gotta get it together. You guys gotta start fighting fire with fire.
And they will not hear it.
No.
Stupid men.
They are stupid, and then they both die.
Yeah, which I do also, I really did like how we do see this other side or this other perspective of the heroes of Harry Potter, right? This, kind of ignorant, glossy-eyed, like,
Right.
good will always win. We can't actually kill anyone, even though they've killed most of our people.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And so they don't want anything to do with it. They all kind of shame Hermione while also still working her to the bone.
Right. They make her feel like shit.
Yeah.
Because, they need her to be fixing everything for them. Typical man, right? You know what I mean? Typical, don't even know. They need her doing what she's doing, but they will not listen to her. They make her feel like she is so inferior because she's not part of the attack. She's not on those front lines. So they are always making her feel like she is inadequate because it's been at this point quite a long time since she was in like an active combat situation. Right. But they're still like, we need you every single hour of every single day to be brewing these potions, to be working on counter curses, to be healing people,
to be foraging by yourself in enemy territory for the things you need to make the potion.
That goes badly, if you're wondering. So it's this very interesting perspective into like what has pushed her to act the way that she does. And just like the background into these characters, like Harry Potter is known to, when he's not feeling great, which is often, he goes and does like underground fight clubs and
Muggle
stuff.
world.
Yes. Yeah. Which is really funny to think about. And then Ron is just like kind of a playboy, like he's just hooking up with a bunch of people, I guess, which was also really interesting because, as we know, Ron and Hermione canonically fall in love. So they don't really touch on that aspect of it. Like, it seems like maybe they never explored that in this universe, but it was kind of interesting to hear, like, maybe at one point Hermione had been interested in him, and then this whole war happened and he's dealing with his own thing in his own way, and he doesn't have time to care about her.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is this whole time that they're making Hermione work like a dog and all the things we've already talked about, they're also just not really friends with her anymore. They're not checking in with her. They don't really care what she has to say. And, part of it is the rift they have over her wanting them to start using the dark arts. But it's really more than that, where it almost, you can finally see, which I honestly think in the books, like the true Harry Potter books, this is true too. They're really just kind of using Hermione for what they need, right?
Right.
She's the one to bail them out. She's the one to solve all the problems. But past that, they don't really care, that she had to obliviate her parents and will never see them again.
Devastating.
Or what she's going on and what she's seeing. And so anyways, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I love it. Also, Hermione and Ginny are roommates.
Yes.
So they're very close, which becomes important later on as Ginny and Harry are developing this like romantic relationship, which is going to be the reason why, there was that thing she had to remember about Ginny. Right. But anyway, so we get this look into what Hermione's life is like in the Order of the Phoenix. You know, she's working with the healers, she's working with Harry and Ron and like the defense people, and she's also meeting with like Alistair Moody and
Kingsley,
yes, who are like the leaders, like the senior authority.
Yeah, I kind of read it as like they're the shadow leaders. Like Harry thinks he's in charge and everybody thinks Harry's in charge, but really Alistair and Kingsley are in charge.
Yeah, really Harry needs somebody to be watching his back at all times, which is true even in the, you know, the canon series of Harry Potter, is that he's not a perfect hero, which is what makes him interesting, right? So we get to this part where Hermione also works very closely with Snape, of course, because of the potions stuff. And Snape is doing his best to like give them information from the dark side so that they can use to like make better counter curses and know like troop movements and stuff like that. And we are introduced to the idea that there is going to be a new double agent wants to enter the game, right? We find out that Draco is like interested in becoming a secret spy guy because Voldemort did some really fucked up shit to his mother, right? I think that was his ultimate motivation. And he's like, even at this point, he's pretty much number 2. Or very close to it.
He's not the
he's
high
maybe number
Reeve yet,
right,
and he's not as powerful as he becomes as the high Reeve.
But he's a trusted member of
the inner circle.
Yes, yeah. He's the protege, right, which he has been for some time after killing Dumbledore. So they decide that Hermione is going to be meeting Draco in this like safe house location that Draco has to relay information back and forth.
Part of what Draco wants for the information,
right,
is there anything else besides the one thing?
I think
he
that
just
was
wants
it.
Hermione before and after the war.
Yes.
And Hermione's like, what?
Right.
What does he want with me? You know, and Snape says, well, he always had an interest in you, you know, a fascination, not anything like a crush or anything, but you know.
Right.
And so they pretty much charge Hermione with prostituting herself out to him for the order, and she agrees to it because she agrees that this is what they need to do.
Yeah, and I think that shows how dedicated she is to doing what she believes in, you know, and that's kind of like her whole story, right? Is she's trying to get more people to do whatever it takes because that is what Voldemort and his army are doing. They are doing whatever it takes to reach their end goal. And the Order of the Phoenix has this preoccupation with like being so good and so nice that they don't want to kill people. They don't want to like do things that are morally gray. But Hermione is like, well, fuck it. I think a lot of it has to do with her alienation from her own inner circle. She feels guilty for not doing enough, for not being in combat, that she's like, well, this is the thing I can do. So I'm going to do whatever it takes, you know, up to and including being Draco Malfoy's little toy, which is kind of crazy. So they start meeting at their safe house, right? It seems like it's going pretty well.
Yeah, Draco's a gentleman. He doesn't make any moves on her. She's questioning still, why does he want her? Because he's not doing any of the things she expected, you know, and I think at some point she's questioning too, is he also a double spy? You know, why did he ask for me specifically?
The information he provides for them is very helpful. It's like essentially helps turn the tide in the war, which is kind of a bad thing in a way, right? Because they start to win again. Like they start to quote unquote like anticipate where they're going to be doing raids or like stuff like that. They're able to take Voldemort's army by surprise and win more of these battles and skirmishes.
But they don't know what Hermione's
Right.
doing. They don't know where the information's coming from. So they just think good is prevailing.
Right.
Finally.
They just think like,
It just makes them believe their own lies.
exactly.
more.
And then Hermione is still she's still saying, we need to be doing more. We need to be like not just disarming and, stupefying people. We need to be really fighting with everything we have. And now that they are becoming more and more victorious, they believe her less and less, which is kind of a mindfuck because she can't tell them what she's doing. She can't compromise Draco's position in that way. And if Harry and Ron knew that it was like Draco and what he was asking her, like they would never. This is like a guy that they've had a very contentious relationship with for a long time. So there's no way they would trust Draco Malfoy.
No. Even though he proves he's trustworthy.
Yes.
Over and over again.
Yes, he does.
So this goes on for a while, right? And then she's out foraging and an anti-apparition ward is put up where she's foraging so that I think, what is it, a werewolf or a vampire shows up and she can't apparate.
I think it's both.
Or maybe it's both.
Or
And
like a hag.
She does something, she gets away and she apparates to the shed where she meets with Draco because it's closer. I forget exactly why. And then she sets off the wards and Draco shows up and he's furious that her supposed friends have just let her go out to do this terribly dangerous thing by herself when she hasn't had any combat training or been, in combat or fighting in years and is woefully unprepared for that.
I love it's delicious. I love it.
Yes. And then that's when Draco says he is going to train her.
Mhm.
But this is only after he's trained her in occlumency so
Yes.
she can hide her memories
Mhm.
and manage them that way. And it's just beautiful.
Yeah, they do a great job with his character is so compelling.
I mean, seriously.
He's so cold and standoffish and sometimes like downright nasty to her, and the way he talks to her, like he still has this mask.
Right.
And sometimes Hermione gets glimpses of what's behind that mask. Like she starts to realize he's a very lonely person. He's a very isolated person.
And this is where the manipulation for Hermione comes in, because once she takes on the spy job, she goes to the library and she finds all of these books that she's reading about how to seduce someone and, how to control them, because that's her mission for all else, is to make him fall in love with her so he'll do whatever she says. And that's right. I mean, that's pretty much what Moody and Shacklebolt say to do. And I think Snape too. And so she becomes very manipulative and like, this is it. He's lonely. So that's how I get him. And it's painful.
Yeah. And she does struggle with it.
She does.
Because I think she can relate to what Draco has gone through.
Right.
Through her own isolation from her friends, through the war, and just everything she's experienced. Like her parents are lost to her as well. At this point, I think Lucius is still, he's around, but he's a dick. Lucius Malfoy. So,
and he's gone a little crazy because his wife.
Yes. So like Draco, his parents are also like inaccessible in a different way. He doesn't have friends, there's nobody he can trust, right? So they forge this connection that's cold and manipulative and crazy, but they're somehow connecting through it.
Right.
And it's very interesting.
And they're there for each other.
Yes.
Even through all this.
Even though, and they're forced to be together. Although I guess Draco kind of started it. Like he wanted them to be forced together.
But I don't think, like, when he calls for Hermione, it isn't because of really truly wanting her before or after the war. It's because he thinks she's the only one he can trust to keep his identity secret.
Right.
Because she's the only one smart enough.
Right. Oh, it's so good. I'm like,
I kind of want to reread it.
I know it's at this point, it's been a couple weeks, I think, since either of us have read it because our schedules are crazy. But now that we're finally getting to like sit down and talk about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was so good, especially this part of the book. This part could have been it for me,
the whole book.
And I would have just eaten it with a spoon. Like I love it so much. So Draco is teaching he's like helping make sure Hermione is safe in his own like fucked up weird way, where he's like, I'm gonna kick your ass. I'm gonna read all your thoughts. I'm gonna make you duel me over and over. I'm gonna teach you how to dance.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yep. He gives her a workout to do to build up her strength.
Yeah, it's so good. And then their like personal interactions are very strange because again, Draco always has this mask that nobody can get under. Like he's so cool and so calculating at all times, but then Hermione,
to let it down.
yeah, and she gets right in there.
Because that's what happens. So when he's giving her the information, he gives her information about, I think, a raid that's going to happen on a prison. And so the order is able to get everybody out, or something happens. And it's such a blow to the dark side that Voldemort holds Draco personally responsible, which he kind of is because he gave the information. But Voldemort doesn't know that. And he puts Draco through this rune ceremony.
Yep.
And he carves all these runes that Draco has to pick out onto his back, and it's such dark magic that when Hermione sees him, she doesn't see him for weeks while her side is dealing with the casualties. And then when she finally does see him again, she's like, oh my God, like I would have helped you sooner and whatever. And that's really when they get closer, because then they see each other every day because Hermione takes it on herself to fix him. And it's just so heavy.
It's so good. Yes.
But it is through these runes that we find out how, as the High Reeve from part one, he's able to do the killing curses. Because Hermione, I forget what it's called, but she has this stone she carries with her that she got in her potions training in Egypt that she's just held on to. It was given to her for Harry, right? Because it's assumed that Harry is going to have to use dark magic at some point in the war, which he doesn't because he refuses. And so the person who gives it to her for this moment when the war is over, so Harry can be purified, because essentially that's what the stone does. It's a constant dark magic purification ritual, because dark magic does take so much out of you, which is why Voldemort's Voldemort, etc. And she puts it in Malfoy.
Yes. It was called the Heart of Isis.
Yes.
That was super cool.
So that is how he's able to perform these killing curses one after the other. It's how he survives these terrible runes on his back. That and the daily healing that Hermione performs for months and whatnot.
He saves an orphanage. That's what it is.
Yes.
That's because it was like a bunch of displaced children that I think it was like Minerva McGonagall was like running an orphanage.
Yes, that's
and
exactly it.
Voldemort's army was gonna like blow it up or whatever. And Malfoy gave them a heads up, so they were able to relocate all the kids. And then Voldemort was pissed.
Yes.
So then he made him go through this crazy shit. And then I was looking up in the book what it was called, The Heart of Isis, and I'm seeing that Hermione told Snape that she did that for Malfoy, like, and Snape is furious with her because Snape doesn't fully trust Malfoy.
No.
Even though Snape's also a double agent, he doesn't fully trust that Malfoy doesn't have some sort of ulterior motive. So to use this like priceless thing.
And there is this like contradiction that Snape, Kingsley, and Alistair Moody all have about they sold Hermione to Draco.
Right.
Which they all did willingly because of the war, but there is that tiny piece of them that recognizes what they have done is equally fucking terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, what does he want with Hermione? And Hermione is really the pure one, right? And so I think that's a piece of where this distrust comes from with that. But Hermione heals him. And that's really, too, when I think we really see their love start to kind of to blossom. But
I mean, that's a big deal.
Oh, man.
Another great part of like this whole story with the runes and the orphanage is we do find out that Draco has been for years trying to figure out how to remove the dark mark to the point where because I guess if you try to cut off your arm, the dark mark like triggers this magic that will basically like remove you'll bleed to death, like, so there's no foreseeable way to get rid of it. And Draco has definitely been doing some like experiments on other Death Eaters that he's killed to see if there's a way to go about using it. And Hermione and Snape have an interaction about this where Snape mentions that like he's noticed because Draco doesn't use his left hand for like doing most things. So he's been trying to like train himself to only have one arm for like a while.
And Hermione notices it too. Yes. She notices he's ambidextrous.
Yes. Hermione and Snape are talking about this attack that Draco had given them a heads up about. And it turns out that Kingsley, Moody, and Snape had fully expected Draco to be killed.
Right.
Because of this. And instead of killing Draco, Voldemort makes him do the runes.
But they expected him to die from that too. Except Hermione saves him.
Right. And they were fully expecting Draco to like not be their problem anymore. And then Hermione just had to go and save his soul. And Snape is again so furious with her for that kind of thing because they're thinking that Draco wants to take over power from Voldemort and that he's playing this like double, triple, quadruple chess game.
Right. And at this point, he's almost more dangerous than Voldemort.
Right. Because Voldemort's dying.
Yeah.
After
all the Horcruxes.
Right. Yeah. So I think we learn more about that in the first part after Dolores Umbridge is killed because that's like one of the last.
Hermione calls it out and asks Draco like he's dying, isn't he? So she saves him.
Right.
Then I think after this, it's when they start the dueling. And Draco kind of punishes her a little bit, I think, because she's gotten him to be so vulnerable. And he doesn't like that.
I'm trying to think of their like physical relationship. They have a couple moments.
Like there's a kiss.
Right.
When they're drunk.
Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of like these moments between them where like from the beginning Hermione fully expected Draco to like do whatever he wanted,
right,
and was trying to like prepare herself to be defensive toward that or let it happen for the good of all that is nice and not evil in the world, right? But the second Hermione shows like that she's not interested in stuff, he backs off.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes the physical manipulation of their relationship harder for her because she has to like play more in her mind. Like, how am I gonna get under his skin to like
make him want me?
Yes, without being like disgusted by this man that I hate, allegedly. That you again secretly love. So after these, like, there's a couple big battles that Draco kind of gives the heads up on, right? There's a big fight like right on Christmas Eve or something like that. They were all together with like all the Order people were together with the Weasleys.
Yep, for Christmas.
Yep.
And they won a battle and they feel like they're finally going to win the
war. Yeah. Christmas was like really happy.
Yes.
For everyone except Hermione, of course, because she knew that it was all fake, that it was all because of Draco.
And I think this is too when she realizes like they're never going to use the dark arts. They think they're winning because good is conquering, but it's not. It's because we have Draco giving us inside information.
Yeah. And then she also...
She gets into a fight with Harry again.
Right. A huge fight. And I think they kind of like pretty much that's like it for them. And also we find out that was like the cutoff for her parents to like remember who she was. So they're like, no matter the outcome of the war, like they're just totally...
They're gone.
They're gone. They're never going to remember her, which is really kind of heavy to realize as you're like surrounded by someone else's family, right? Pretty fucked up. Oh, and Draco got her like a set of knives for Christmas because he loves her.
I think it's the only thing she gets besides the jumper from Ron's mom.
Which was, it was green, wasn't it? And Ron and everybody was like giving her a hard time. Color. Yeah, exactly. Which is cute for obvious reasons. Oh, and then Hermione gave him like, she makes these healing kits for everybody, right? That she gives them out to everyone for Christmas. And then she makes like a really fancy, like expanded edition for Draco because he's obviously all getting into trouble all the time.
Yes, and even though she's not ready to yet really admit it to herself,
Right.
she's worried about him.
And then she breaks her hand.
No, I think it's while they're dueling, there's something happens and they tumble and end up on the floor, right? And he's on top of her.
Nice.
She realizes it's her moment to win, and they do it.
Hell yeah.
And it's Hermione's first time.
Was it?
And it's painful.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're
really
right.
Good for her at all because she knows that she's manipulating him.
Right. And then she has to
won, but it's this bittersweet.
Yeah. And she has to pretend that it's like it's not her first time because again, anytime she's hesitant about something, Draco immediately shuts down and immediately goes back into that like totally like masked persona that like aloof. So she has to pretend that it's not uncomfortable because if she loses that poker face, he's going to be out of there. And she again is using it to manipulate him, which is kind of fucked up,
right?
Or maybe a lot of fucked up.
Yeah. And then once they're done, it's kind of like all the masks come off and Draco's like, you didn't realize they were gonna just let me die after the runes. And you know, he even recognizes what she's doing and that she's been manipulating him and she's won. And then I think at this point Shacklebolt and Moody want to kill him, right? And Snape too. She goes to Snape's first and he's like, what did he do to you?
Right. That was weird.
It was weird.
Her relationship with Snape is weird to me.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was more paternal or if like the rumors people had about her and Snape.
I was gonna say, Ginny asks her at one point if she's like fucking him. Yeah. It's like,
it's weird.
All right, calm down, Ginny. Fucking weirdo. I'm going through a little bit here. I remember now that the death of Colin Creevey was like a real turning point.
Yeah, for her and Harry.
Yes. And that is when the whole argument started between like using dark magic or not. And I'm pretty sure Draco was the one that killed him.
Yep. And he brings that up and tells Hermione that, I think to push her away after this happens.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or shortly thereafter. And then I forget what finally brings them together.
I'm trying to find it.
I think it's because she uses dark magic.
Yes, she does.
She's done it.
Oh, and
somebody tells her not to be alone. And that's right. And he says, call me, use me if you need
me.
She tries to go home, but there's nobody there for her or nobody she can talk to about it. And then something happens and she ends up going back to the shack and calling him. And I think that's when their true relationship really starts. And it's less about manipulating each other and just more
about being there for each other.
And being in love. And then that's when you find out, too, that Draco actually spends most of his time living in Muggle hotels.
Yes.
When he's not with Hermione or doing things for the Dark Lord. And that's where their meetings pretty much move to the hotel rooms. And they're just being in love and loving all over each other. I think it just escalates to the final battle.
Right, yeah.
At Sussex, or before Sussex, at Hogwarts.
Hogwarts, and then Sussex is after.
Because she's healing everybody from the final battle, and then ends up apparating there because she has to talk to Harry because she learns that he is a Horcrux.
Right, and she has
an idea and wants to find out.
And she had like promised Draco, Draco had a plan to get her out. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
After the Battle of Hogwarts.
Which he'd been trying to convince her of ever since they were like finally in love.
Right.
Like, let me take you away, but she refuses. And
because they needed her.
Well, because they needed her. And part of their original agreement, like when this all starts between them, is that he will not interfere in her work for the order. But after, I don't know if I think she's hurt or something happens. And he's pretty much like, your friends don't give a fuck about you. If anything happens to you, I'm going to kill every fucking one of them. So let me take you away from here. And then Ginny's preggers.
Yes.
And wants to hide it from Harry.
Oh, right. So Ginny is pregnant with Harry's baby and stupidly, or maybe not stupidly, doesn't want him to know. Mm-hmm. And this is for this has been going on for months in the background. Mm-hmm. They're doing stuff to manipulate her physical appearance so that she looks like she has spattergroit, I think it's called, which is a super contagious disease. So she's like
fully quarantined.
Yeah, like locked in a fucking room. And Harry's going nuts. Ron is going nuts. They all want to see her, but they can't. Hermione is like the only person that gets to see her. And Hermione is like trying to convince Ginny to tell Harry about it, because obviously everything is coming to a head as far as the war. Like they're getting really close to the culmination, the finale here. Hermione is like, you have to tell him. But Ginny is like adamant that it would be too much of a distraction. I'm trying to remember if it was like when they were after the Battle of Hogwarts, when Draco gets Hermione out, if that's when she's like, you have to save Ginny.
Yes, because Ginny, like their safe house blows up. Ginny gets taken to Sussex, which is Dolehov's, however you say his name, crazy curse prison, where he comes up with all these curses. And so she tells Draco he has to save Ginny, and Draco agrees to it without telling Hermione that the only way to do that is to blow his cover. And so he goes and saves Ginny. Meanwhile, Snape gets called there, and when he goes to save Ginny, she makes him leave her with Snape, and he makes Snape do an unbreakable vow saying he won't take Hermione anywhere. And so he doesn't, but Hermione leaves on her own to go blow Sussex up.
Yes.
To protect Draco now that he's blown his cover. And then that is where she sees all the dead bodies of her friends. Yeah. I think some of them are even still alive, and she watches them get killed. It's just terrible. And that is when Umbridge imprisons her, because she had to promise Draco that if he went and saved Ginny, that's why he agreed.
Right, she wasn't supposed to be there.
She also promises him that if he does this for her, she will finally leave the war, like he's been asking her to, and she will go into hiding like he wants her to, so she'll be safe. But instead, she gets captured and imprisoned for 16 months.
Which is so, like, they were so close. I mean, the war was lost at that point. Mm-hmm. Like, once Harry died, although, had they known what they know directly after that, Voldemort was in a very vulnerable position, once Harry died, right? Although they didn't know about, there was one more Horcrux, Dolores's Horcrux. But they didn't know that. They thought
Harry was the last one.
Right. But Hermione, we find out how close she was to not being imprisoned for 16 months in solitary confinement. Like, it's really crazy to think she had an out, and if she would have stayed put, she probably could have, been in the safe house with Ginny the whole time. Mm-hmm. But
she refused, right? Because she was not going to let them kill Draco.
Right.
And you find too, she leaves him a letter where she finally says, "I love you" to him. It's heartbreaking.
So,
and then we wake up. Or she wakes up and she's back in present day where she is his surrogate.
Yes.
And she has to try to force these two worlds where he's been raping her, but they were in love together. And that's traumatizing.
Just a little, right?
Right. Meanwhile, she's realized that the part of the reason Draco's kept her in the dark as his surrogate this whole time and played into this cold persona was to further protect her, and that he and Snape have a plan to get her to the safe house once and for all and out of here, which is part of why he was trying to make sure she wasn't becoming pregnant and all of these things. And she's pretty furious about it and is like, so you're just going to stay here and die? Because, like, they're going to kill you if you do that. I think that's when she starts researching how to make a potion that will keep him from dying if they cut his arm off.
Right.
To remove the dark mark.
Yes. So there is one kind of thorn in the side of this whole plan now that her memories have been recovered, and that is Lucius Malfoy.
Yes.
Is still kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And
we also forgot to mention, you find out why Draco is trying to get retribution, kind of, right? And revenge. And it is because the reason he killed Dumbledore is because he came home one summer and Voldemort had moved into his house and put his mother in a cage and tortured her. And the only way he would let her go was if Draco killed Dumbledore, which he does, but it takes months that she's being tortured. And so even after she's out of the cage and Draco's got his dark mark and doing everything Voldemort says, his mother is so traumatized. She has the same sort of like agoraphobia that Hermione later develops, and it's just too much for him to watch. And then I forget how his mother is finally killed. I think it's a fire at their
The
house.
fiend fire,
The
yes.
fiend fire.
Yeah.
And his father, though, his mother did everything to hide this from Lucius. So Lucius never knows what the Dark Lord did to his wife or any of that. And Draco's kept it quiet this whole time. But anyways, Lucius comes home and he finds it interesting that Draco has Hermione so well protected. And he does everything to try to get her out of that protected room, which he succeeds at.
Yeah, and that is bad.
Yeah.
Right, because we see, Draco is a crazy person. More like he has some interesting tendencies, and he learned this at the foot of the super crazy person who is Lucius Malfoy. Again, he's been just driven to the brink because of like losing his wife. So this whole like master plan that Draco is trying to get rolling with Snape to get her out to the safe house with Ginny is being co-opted by Lucius fucking with Hermione. I remember at one point Stroud had like threatened to give Hermione to Lucius. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And that's when she finally gets knocked up.
Right. I guess that's a better...
Because they don't say it, but I think it's implied that Draco was probably giving himself some sort of birth control charm to prevent her getting knocked up and getting her memories back.
There was some instance of like the first time they were together that there was like a weird like antiseptic or something. And I wondered if that was like a, magical spermicide or whatever. And then when Hermione took the potion, it kind of negated that effect. Yeah, Hermione was having seizures in the library. I think just because the pregnancy has been
Too much.
difficult on her, especially now that
That's what it is. She has a big seizure that triggers all her memories.
Yeah.
Back.
Yep. And they're still happening even after she recovers all the memories. She's having more seizures, and then Lucius takes an interest in her. Ugh, it's so gross. Let's see what assets you have.
Yeah, he wants to know, why is my son
obsessed with
so
this person?
Obsessed and protective of you. Does he tries to read her mind, but he's terrible at it.
Oh yeah, he's very clumsy. And at this point, Hermione is very skilled at occlumency.
And so she forces the memories of Draco telling her what happened to his mother.
Yes, that's
to the
it.
Forefront of her mind. And Lucius doesn't believe it at first, but then he does. And then I think Draco gets back and fucks his dad up for locking her in the dungeon and locks him in the cage and is ready to take Hermione to the safe house, even though she hasn't figured out how to get his dark mark off, and he doesn't care. He's ready to die to make sure she's okay. And she thinks all she needs to complete her spell is Phoenix Tears. And that is when Lucius says that he does have Phoenix Tears.
Yes, he has like an ancient, like it's like a family heirloom or something.
Like a family trunk that only you inherit once you have an heir, once you've made an heir. Only Lucius's blood can open it up to get it and whatnot. And he says he'll give it, and Draco doesn't trust him. Like, why would you do it? And he's honest, like, this because you're my son and I love you and I'm gonna do this for you. And then unbeknownst to Draco, Hermione strikes a deal with Lucius where she pretty much says, like, you have to kill yourself in order for this to work. So he gives the Phoenix Tears. Hermione brews the potion, cuts off Draco's arm, gives him the potion, and then I can't remember if they port key or they fly away, right?
I think so.
The first safe house, and Lucius does follow through.
Yes.
And blows himself and the whole manor up. And I don't know if they leave bodies behind or if it's just presumed that Draco and Hermione are there.
Yeah. Well, because it was fiend fire.
Right. And so...
Which is also... That's how Narcissa...
Yes.
Draco's mother also died that way.
That's right.
Very brutal.
Very brutal.
Very romantic. Tragically romantic.
Yeah. And so to the whole world, they're all dead.
Yes.
And that's why Hermione told him he had to kill himself, because they all had to look like they were dead. So they get away to the safe house and they stay there for a bit, just kind of I think, in shock of everything they've been through and not really believing they've gotten away. And then Hermione starts to get, PTSD.
Naturally, right.
Or continues. I think they've both had PTSD this whole time, but it's like now that it's over, they're both just kind of on pins and needles. When are they coming for us?
Right. I mean, they've been fighting the big bad for so long, and Draco's position as the High Reeve, as the number 2, as this popular socialite in the new regime, was protecting them.
Right.
And as well as Hermione's like fugue state memories, because nobody could tell, despite trying incredibly hard, that they were secretly in love and destined to be together forever. But now that all of that's gone, they tried to cover their tracks as best they could, but they're still worried.
They're at the first safe house. They spend, I think, a few days there.
Yeah.
And then they're both kind of getting so anxious. Draco's always looking out the window that they decide they need to go. And then they go to the final safe house, which is where Ginny and her son are.
Yes.
At this point, it's been a few years. Ginny's given birth. The baby's what?
He's like 2.
And Ginny's interactions with Hermione are very interesting because Hermione, I think, is just so defensive against Ginny because Ginny's trying, Ginny's, even though Draco saved her and, he just kind of brought her to this safe house and he would come and visit and whatnot. But when Hermione becomes his surrogate, he's honest with Ginny about it. And she loses all respect for him again, hates him. And so she immediately tries to convince Hermione that Draco's still not to be trusted, and Hermione will have none of that.
Ginny, her character at the end of this to me is a little strange. I mean, her characterization throughout the book didn't feel fully realized to me, I guess.
But I mean, even in the Harry Potter books, it's not fully realized.
Right. And I mean, we spent so much time on other characters that it was a lot to ask to get like a full Ginny side plot sort of thing. So I totally understand it, but just especially in this last part, and maybe it's just me because I'm not like typically a dark romance person, but even as we're like fleshing it out like through the ending, it has sort of a happy ending.
So here's the thing.
But not,
yeah,
right.
This whole book, the whole week and a half or whatever I was reading it, every day I would say to my partner, this bitch better give me a happy ending. Like, this is so depressing and so tragic and so torturous. I can't put it down, but it needs to have a happy ending, which most of the time I'm not necessarily rooting for a happy ending. Sometimes you want a terrible ending because happy endings don't always happen. But this book, I wanted my fucking happy ending, which they start to give you, they're in the safe house. They've made it. They're both alive. The world does truly think they're dead, so they know they're safe. Hermione has the baby. Years pass. They kind of give us a couple scenes from what their life there looks like. Voldemort is finally overthrown, and they decide they're just going to leave him in his castle to die, and Ginny is not okay with that. So she leaves her son with Draco and Hermione and their daughter to go into the world and kill Voldemort herself, which she does. And the other reason she does it is because it's clear everything's just going to go back to how it was before the war, where purebloods are still going off about being purebloods, and the political hierarchy that exists will be what it was. It just won't have Voldemort, right? And so she decides that's not good enough for what, understandably, for what they've all been through.
Yeah, she's been through it. I mean,
she's right to do that. And so she leaves for about a year and then comes back for her son and then tries to convince Hermione to leave with her, and says Draco has to stay here, but you don't. And meanwhile, in the whole flashback part of the book, towards the end, Hermione says to Draco, there is no after the war for me. Even if we win, I'm going to be tried for war crimes. I've done things.
Right.
And there's no way they're going to let Draco live, right? For all the things he's done. So they decide to stay, which is good, right? That should be a happy ending. They're alive. Yes. They're together.
But I don't know,
at the very end. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just for me, I honestly wanted it to be worse. Am
Really?
I insane? I don't know. with a lot of books like this, once they get together and it's like they start like loving each other, I'm like, and I'm done. You know, like I don't give a shit. Especially because like, oh, Ginny's alive and like Harry's son, he's like the new icon of the movement of goodness and whatever. And he's named James after Harry's stupid dick dad. I wish fucking Draco would have died in the fire with Lucius. Oh, it would have been so deliciously.
No, I like that they survived together. What killed me, though, and made me feel like it was not a happy ending, because, yes, again, they're together, and that's happy-ish, because they're also isolated, right? Like, they go into town every once in a while, but under polyjuice potions, so, you know, there's no real life for them outside of their very isolated life together. So that doesn't feel like a happy ending to me. But more than that, the epilogue shows their daughter. So their daughter goes out into the world under a different name. You know, I think it's Aurora Black is what they call her.
Yes.
So nobody knows who her parents are. And then in the epilogue, it shows her meeting up with Ginny and her son as adults, right? She's an adult now. So this is supposed to be what, like 20, 25 years after they get to the safe house and are finally safe and have the baby. And she goes into a bookstore with James and finds a book on the war.
Yes.
And in the book is the picture of Hermione, Harry, and Ron at the Christmas where she and Harry had their final falling out. And the caption reads, I forget exactly what it says, but it's pretty much like Harry and Ron were the heroes of the war, and Hermione was a healer who never took on an active role in the war. And it's like, she ended the fucking war, bitches.
Right, yeah.
Like, she's lost to time. Like, that is not a happy ending.
Yeah, nobody would have been, none of this wouldn't have happened if Hermione hadn't made the sacrifices she did. And also it's the same with Draco.
Yeah.
Like, she looks up and it's like, yeah, Draco, he was
a monster.
He was a terrible dude and he's dead, and fuck him, he should be dead. Fuck that guy.
Right.
So obviously Aurora knows
the reality.
Yes.
And so does James and Ginny.
Yeah, it's also interesting, like, during their isolation, I mean, they're basically just like stuck together. Exactly. Like imprisoned in a way where, because, you know, they have to keep their identities a secret. And also Draco, you get the feeling that he's like a good father, but he struggles a lot with the reality of how his daughter was created. I think is a big part of it. Like, he struggles a lot with like, this is something that should have happened
differently.
Yes, it should have been out of love and not out of evil compulsion from a dark dictator. You know, like the most evil being to ever evil of all time forced me to sexually assault this woman I love, and now we have a child. You know, so I mean,
Hermione says to him too when she's giving birth or about to, like, I need you to choose to love her. Like, I know this has to be a choice for you, and I need you to make it.
Right.
And at first he won't even look at her, right? Or hold her, and then he finally does, and it, you know, all the feelings come and they are very close. But yeah, it is a challenge for him.
So, I mean, it is a happy ending, but it does still have that like dark twist that is kind of a theme throughout. Not kind of, definitely the major reality of this whole work is this very fucked up world. So, do you have any other thoughts about the ending here, the epilogue and everything?
Just that it made me super sad.
Oh, right. I forgot he has like a magic hand after they cut it off.
That's the other thing, because he builds her in preparation for bringing her there.
You saw the pictures.
Oh my gosh. In preparation for bringing her there, he fills, you know, their half of the house with books.
Of course.
Builds her a potions lab. And this was before, and that's the other thing, like, Draco really did not prepare to be there with her. He really thought he was going to get her to safety and then go back to die.
Yeah.
And that is quickly apparent to Hermione, because he doesn't know what to do with himself once they're there. He's just constantly on edge, checking the wards.
Yes.
Waiting, and there's nothing to wait for anymore.
All right. So, I mean, that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah.
Overall, do you have like a rating you would give this book, like out of 5 stars? What?
Out of 5 stars,
5 stars.
5.
Really? 5?
Yeah.
Nice. I would probably do 4.5, but I am a miserable bitch. So,
I mean, yeah, there were some of the writing I would have, that could have been a little better.
For the most part, I think the writing was great.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and I'm someone who is terribly hard to please with that kind of stuff. So especially with this being like a fan fiction,
Yeah. Oh no, she did well.
it's more well written than like half the books I've read this year.
Oh yeah, I think most of my issues were the writing, weren't even the writing itself. It was clear that this was released chapter by chapter, so there were some things she restated like 3 or 4 times. Like that was kind of,
it is long.
It's very long.
I might have said this before, but I'm looking at the like PDF of it right now, and it's over 1,000 pages.
Yeah, it's very long.
And that's some of the critiques I've seen other people bring up as well, is that it's very dark and very heavy, and it is much longer than it needs to be, which I think is true in a way. I mean, I think
it still would. I think you could cut some of it out, but I think it'd still be like 800 or 900 pages.
Yeah, that makes me. I'm interested to see what the new release is going to be like, which I want to say it comes out soon. I could totally. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me actually look it up real quick, because that might be a good little tidbit for our millions of listeners that are going to be listening. Announcing Alchemize, fall of 2025. God damn it. But it's coming out, and I'm interested to see, with the intent of like streamlining it, if it's going to be as good of a read, as good of an overall story.
Well, and for me, again, like, will it pull me in the same way with these new characters in this new universe I'm not already invested in? Because that was the piece I think that did draw me in as a Harry Potter fan, right? Like, immediately it was like, oh my God, we get to see them after.
Yes.
And Harry didn't win, and it's all different. So I'll be curious. And same with Draco and the Mortifying Ordeal of Falling in Love, which I also highly recommend. Very, very, very different than Manacled, but very well written. And it's mostly from Draco's perspective. Like, it's in third person, but it follows more Draco's thoughts and feelings.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but I'll have to check it out.
Sure, it's good.
So, do you think you would recommend this to? I mean, you have been kind of recommending
Manacled? Oh yeah, I recommend it. I personally downloaded it on several of my friends' phones for them.
My goodness, I love that.
I would absolutely recommend it. It is not for the faint of heart. You will have lots of emotions. I recommended it to our boss, actually, because she was going on a retreat. And then I was like, actually, you don't want to read this on a retreat. You want to read this when your wife can hold you while you cry away from people.
I love that.
It's very, like, that's just how it made me feel. Just so sad.
It was a wild ride. I'm trying to remember. I meant to read it while I was traveling. And then once you gave it such a good review, I like couldn't wait. So then I was procrastinating getting ready for my trip and everything by like staying up till 1 a.m. reading. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I would probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5. But that's, again, just because I'm always thinking of ways people could strive to be better. And I think it was really wonderful. It really surprised me.
Yeah, same.
Overall. And I say that as a huge Harry Potter fan. I was like, really, like, a Harry Potter fan fiction is, everyone's favorite dark romance book. Like, but it's I think a really great read. I do want to say there are a couple places, because I do audiobooks a lot of the time, even though I feel like it's harder to get into an audiobook because it's not as all encompassing. It's harder to pay attention to an audiobook, at least for me with my ADHD. Like so with a book, it's like it's in my face and I'm engaged. With an audiobook, that's harder to do. It has to be like almost a more compelling story to have the audiobook really do it. So there are a couple places. There's no official audiobook, obviously, because it's a fan fiction, but there are a couple people who have done like fan versions of the audiobook. And there's one I think that was really good that I didn't listen to that one. And I probably should have, because the ones I listened to, they were decent. but the editing wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that as someone who has to edit this audio and probably won't do the best job in the world. So, you know, that's very hypocritical. But those resources are out there if you are an audiobook listener and you want to give it a try. I listened to it on YouTube. Just look it up and you'll be able to find what you need.
If you're going to download it, remember to do it before the end of 2024, or find someone else who's already downloaded it to send it to you.
Yeah, right. But this is Babygirl Book Club approved.
100%.
Maybe must read. I don't know if it sounds like something you'd be into. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do you think?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm not sure what book we're going to do after this. We have to talk about that.
But find one we agree upon.
Yes, we have very different tastes, but I think that makes it interesting, right? So yeah, if you guys want to share any of your thoughts and feelings in the comments, hit us up, let us know. We'd love to talk to you guys. So thank you so much for listening.